Welcome to the fourth installment of this Masterclass series. And I'm going to say from the beginning that this class, for me personally, is a very exciting class because before we've been focusing really from the equity perspective of stuff, the Jamstock X, went into financial statements, we went into doing equity valuations. Now we're going to step over to the other side of the asset class, which is fixed income. And that, for me, I'm very biased, it's actually my favorite side of the spectrum. So this week, we're actually going to go into a couple of topics. In focus, we're going to be looking at what is a bond and what are their uses. We're going to go into different type of bonds. Then we're going to go into distinguishing between a good credit and a bad credit, right? So just to jump into it a little bit, what is a bond, right? Now a bond has multiple definitions and it really depends on what context you're speaking of, but they're all generally the same. So a bond is a fixed income instrument that represents a loan made by an investor to a borrower, typically a corporate or a government. So bonds can be issued by individuals at the corporate level, or they can be issued by nations at the sovereign level. So those are one way you can look at a bond. A bond also refers to as a fixed income instrument, since bonds traditionally pay a fixed interest rate, which we refer to as coupon, to debt holders. You have variable or floating interest rates, which are also common for bonds. So when you get a bond, there's a part of it that says you're going to earn this amount over the life of the bond, which may vary depending on if it's a floating or if it's a fixed one. Then finally, bonds are units of corporate debt issued by companies and securitized as tradable assets. The last definition is the one that most people would be familiar with, meaning that you can buy a bond, you can trade a bond on an open market kind of concept. It's actually a tradable security. You have some bonds that aren't tradable. Those are private bonds really, and those are sometimes some of the corporate bonds, especially in a local space like Jamaica. Sorry, you'll hear about private papers, and that will kind of give you an idea that, hey, some of these bonds aren't necessarily tradable or they don't have a marketable value. So all these three definitions right here definitely give you an idea of what a bond is. So when a company or a sovereign issues a bond, it is a contractual agreement, and I highlight that because this means that it is written in stone with the actual piece of paper that says, hey, this is a bond. So it acts as a contractual agreement between a company or a sovereign, who from now on we're going to refer to as the issuer, to the owners of the bonds, who we now refer to as the bondholders, debt holders, or creditors. So this essentially covers what a bond is. Next, we're going to look at what makes up a bond. So I'm going to ask to borrow a piece of paper for somebody who's in the room. Let's tear out that piece of paper. All right, I can borrow your pen. So I'm going to draft a bond for the guys who are in here. For the guys that can't see, you have to use your imagination. So when we're speaking about what makes up a bond, there's 5 distinct features that has to be on every single bond. This, if it's not on a bond, if it's not on a piece of paper that is called a bond, that means it's not actually a bond. You need to have these 5 pieces of critical information. The first being the borrower, also known as the issuer of the bond. They represent who is liable for the debt obligation or who owes the debt holders. No, you can't lend the money to somebody and you don't have a clue who you're lending the money to. So hence, you need to know who the issuer is. So on my bond, I'm going to be the issuer. So this bond is going to have issuer Haughton Richards, right? Secondly, you need a coupon rate. This represents how much will be paid to debt holders for loaning the issuer. This also represents what cash flow obligation the debt holder is legally entitled to. Remember, the bond is a contractual agreement. That means this money that is owed to you in the form of coupon is an actual obligation that you have to get, right? So I'm going to pay my coupon rate. Yes, I put my coupon at 10%. 10% in this economy? Jano. All right. I was told my coupon is 10%. I'm sure I have a lot of people who want to buy this coupon bond. And then another feature of a bond that you must state is the price. Now the price represents what it will cost the debt holder to be a creditor of the issuer, right? So that is the important, these are the first 3 important aspects of a bond. Now for the price, Bonds can be issued at a premium, meaning that the price is greater than the face value. I will go into the face value next so we can get a full picture. But when a price is greater than a bond's face value, it is said to be at a premium. When a bond is issued at a discount, that means that the price is below its actual face value. And then when a bond is said to be issued at par, that means that the face value and the price are equal. These are the three ways in which you can issue a bond, right? When we go to the maturity date now, we're speaking about, this represents the date at which the issuer is legally obligated to repay the debt holder. That means if me and you agree, say, all right, 2 years from now, on May 28th, you're going to have to pay me back my money. That means 2 years from now, on May 28th, you have to pay me back my money. Why? Because this is a contractual agreement. So I'm going to write this down on my contract. So my price is 100, and I'm going to agree that my maturity date is May 28th, 2022. Cool? So you want a 10% coupon for a 2-year term? And them kind of bond you don't want? So okay.
I wish.
Face value now. This represents how much the bond is actually worth and the nominal amount that will be paid to debt holders. Now we made a reference to the face value before, where we said that the price is greater than the face value, is a premium. The price is less than the face value, it's a discount. Or if it's equal to the face value, it's at par. What the face value represents is simply stating that at the maturity date, this is the amount of money I'm actually going to give you back. So for example, if you pay the price of $90 for a bond, but the face value is actually $100, that means that you're actually going to get $10 more in 2 years' time than what you paid right now. Hence why there's a difference between price and face value. Hence why you have premiums and discount bonds or bonds who are at par. So again, the price that you pay for a bond does not represent the face value for that bond. That bond has an intrinsic value at the end of it. Cool? Right. So these 5 components are common features of a bond. Every bond must have this. So let me write my face value. I'm going to say the face value for my bond is 110. So this is my bond, and I don't know who wants this bond.
Me.
No, it's fine. So these 5 components are common features of a bond and can be found in a bond's prospectus, similar to an IPO for a stock. Every bond must issue a prospectus, and their prospectus, I will admit, doesn't look as pretty and glamorous like the ones that we're used to seeing on the stock exchange. These are written strictly by lawyers, so using a lot of high-level terminology, and it's very boring to read. There's no pretty graphics, there's nothing that you like in a bond prospectus, but you have to read it to get important information. What information are you looking for? You're looking for information such as covenants. What covenants represent is that you have positive and you have positive and negative covenants. Positive simply saying, these are the things that I will do as long as you are a debt holder to me. You know, I won't pay dividends. You know, I will give you my financial reports. You know, I will ensure to have an analyst call every quarter. These are positive or affirmative covenants. These are things that I will do. Cool? Then you have negative covenants, which are things that I say that which I will not do, which is I won't raise any more debt. You know, I won't pay my shareholders before I pay my bondholders. You know, I won't do any form of mergers or acquisition that would change the corporate structure of my company. These are negative covenants that simply state what a bondholder, an issuer cannot do. Right? So you have positive or affirmative, and you have negative covenants. Positive represents what they will do, negative means what they can't do. And because it's a contractual agreement, if they breach either of these, you are entitled back to your money, or you can do a renegotiation. But really and truly, these are contractual agreements, so once it is broken, you are obligated to then be able to obtain back your money. Next, you want to look at the collateral. Now, if I come to you and say, all right, this piece of bond that I've written up is collateral is this TV. Now, sure, you guys would like a TV this big. So you say, well, if this is the TV backing this bond, okay, I'll definitely take this bond. You don't want to look at what exactly is secure in this piece of paper. So what is behind this piece of paper can't be just good faith. Yeah, man, I give you back your money in 2 years. I mean, people don't lend money like that. You need to know what is actually backing or securing this type of bond that you're issuing. Then you want to look at the guarantor. So you say, for example, you like my TV, but you don't really trust Haughton Richards. You don't really know nothing about this youth. But you know, Mr. Sean Taylor. And Sean says, Haughton bond is a good bond. He would act as my guarantor. At that point in time, you say, all right, this bond don't look so bad, because in the event that Haughton is unable to pay a 10% coupon bond in 2 years, you can get back your money from Sean, who can probably afford a 10% coupon in 2 years. Cool. Then you want to know who's your trustee. Clearly, you don't want to be coming to, you can't go to, for example, call it John Brown's shop. You can't go to him and say, yo, give me your bond. No, normally there's a intermediary person known as a trustee that kind of does the facilitating of this. Meaning that you give me your money, I give you the bond, I give the money then to the issuer, and we keep transacting like that. You rarely find it that the bondholders are always or directly in relation to the issuer. There's always a trustee assigned to a bond, and that's very important, because again, you want the trustee to be somebody where they don't even have a registered address. You can't even find your trustee, because they're supposed to be representing your interests as much as the issuer. So who the trustee is for a bond offer also matters greatly to if you want to be a part of that bond. Then you want to look at the size of the offer and the capital being raised. The reason why that matters is I can issue a bond I can issue one bond worth $1 million, or I can issue 1 million bonds worth $1. Same amount of money being raised, but you realize that one has more liquidity than the other. Yeah. So that's why it definitely matters. You want to see what is the size of the offer. I can raise the same amount of money, but give you less bonds to get it. Hence the bond becomes quite illiquid and harder to trade. So again, you can have one bond worth $1 million, or you can have 1 million bonds worth $1. You want to buy the bond that has at least 999,000, whatever the number is, more other securities that you can trade and get. And that again goes into your capital being raised. So these are the common things you want to look at when you're looking at a bond prospectus. So you know the 5 things are, you want to look at the face value, maturity, the price, the issuer, which is very important, guys. I want to highlight issuer. Not because of bond. A lot of companies, when they're issuing bonds, they do a lot of structure in such a way that you may be actually obligated to by a holding company, which don't have no employers, they even have a registered address, but they don't want to issue in the bond. Again, they'll have probably a good guarantor behind them, but at the end of the day, you need to know who exactly is this bond obligated to. It's very important to know who the issuer is for a bond. And then lastly is the coupon rate. You know, you want to ensure that you're adequately compensated for giving this company your money. So now we have a whole universe of type of bonds. I mean, I can't even count how much bonds are out there. You have somebody called financial engineer that every day they get up and make a different way to make a bond to raise money. And I mean, it kind of gives you an idea of how deep these bond markets can really get, because they want to raise the money. So on the face of it though, bonds are categorized based off these distinctions right here. For example, principal repayment is you have bullet bonds. What bullet bonds mean? I won't pay you interest right now, or I'll only pay you I'll only pay interest right now, and then at the end I'll give you back your principal plus the final interest payment. That is a bullet bond. Then you have fully amortized bonds, which mean that over the life of the bond, I'll pay you piece interest, piece principal, so that when the bond actually matures, there's not anything left but to give you that final payment. That is a fully amortizing bond. Then you can have a partially amortizing bond, which means that the 4-year bond, for the first 2 years, I'll only pay interest. Thereafter, I'll start paying you both interest and principal together for the remainder life of the bond. These are just some of the ways based on principal on which a bond can look, and that's just 3 bonds right there. Then you have coupon payment structure. Now this gets endless. You have floating rate notes, meaning that most bonds have interest rates that are linked to a benchmark. You say the US LIBOR, 3 months, 6 months. If the US LIBOR goes up, my coupon rate will go up. If the US LIBOR goes down, my interest rate will go down. For those type of notes, they tend to be what you call a ceiling and a floor, meaning ceiling and a floor. So my interest rate can't go too low if LIBOR goes down too low. It stops it at, say 6. But if LIBOR goes up, I can't want to go all the way up with LIBOR. you cap it out at probably 10. So there you have a ceiling and your floor for floating rate arrangements. Then you have step-up coupon bonds. So if you issue a 10-year bond, I can say that after 2 years, you probably get another 0.5%. Then another 3 years, you get another 0.6. At each way you go, the longer you have the bond, the coupon rate can step up and get more and more and more. For a credit-linked coupon bond, that's essentially saying that, hey, what is the rating of this bond? If the bond rating goes up, interest rate goes down. If the bond rating goes down, interest rate goes up. We'll go into why. I like how your face is confused. We'll go into why it's an inverse relationship soon. So again, as credit ratings go up, the coupon rate goes down. And as the credit rating goes down, interest rates go up. We'll go into why that is the case later into this session. Another way you can get it is payment in kind, coupon bonds. What does that mean? But not give you no money, but me give you more bond. No.
What?
You don't want more bond? So that is another, I don't understand what people saying what. Did you sell offer you guys payment in kinds? Payment in kind bonds. Payment in kind bonds are essentially bonds that say, I will, instead of giving you actual cash, I will give you more bonds. No, the reason why that is good for certain companies, because again, right, you will have more nominal bonds at the end, so you're actually entitled to more money that you pay for. So you simply think of it like this. You say you bought 10 bonds at $90, but over the life of that bond, you say that 5-year bond, you earned 20 bonds along the way. You're now going to get $100 times not only 10 bonds, but now you have an additional 30. 30 is the total amount you have. So you didn't spend any more money, but you didn't get any coupon either. But now at the maturity of the bond, you actually have a higher nominal amount, which is why payment in kinds are an attractive bond depending on who is issuing a payment in kind. You have deferred coupon bonds where a company will say, hey, for a 10-year bond, for the first 3 years, I'm not giving you no principal, I'm not giving you no interest. But after that first 3 years, I'm then going to start getting, you're going to start getting interest payments, or you could start amortizing. Some companies will do that, particularly if they're doing a project financing. So if I'm buying if I'm raising money to do a project, and that project not going to complete until 3 years time, then at that point in time, they can't pay you, but they probably want to ensure that the cash flows from the project is what's paying for the bond. Hence why deferred coupon bond is an option. And then you have index-linked bonds, which essentially you have benchmarks around the world, and they say, all right, if the benchmark goes up, you know, the interest rate and the benchmark goes up, the interest rate will go up with it. And again, this shows you the different ways of how a coupon, this is just coupon structure alone, and that shows how much bonds we just went through already. Then you have the market of the bond. Now, the market of the bond, you have domestic bond, foreign bond, euro bond, and global bond. Now, these are 4 distinct markets. A domestic bond is a bond that's issued in the local currency for the local market. So if I give you my bond and I issue it in JMD in Jamaica, it's a domestic bond. Cool? Okay. If I am from, let's say, South Africa, and I issue that bond in Jamaica, if I'm domiciled in South Africa, but I issue the bond in Jamaica at a Jamaican dollar denomination, it's a foreign bond, mainly because the person that issued the bond is not in Jamaica, right? Euro bond means that this bond is just issued, think of it like space, it's just issued out there in a global marketplace. Those are called euro bonds. There's no domicile location of any of these companies or any of these bonds. They're issued in a global space. So the way you can look at euro bonds is that you will see euro dollar bonds. What does that mean? That euro bond is denominated in USD. Or you can buy a euro yen bond, which means that this euro bond is denominated in yen. So that is how they look at it. So these are not bonds that are found in particular jurisdictions. It's issued in a global space, held in trust by different trustees, different banks, etc. But that essentially represents euro bonds. Then global bonds is a combination of euro bonds, but those bonds are also issued in a domestic currency. So when we speak about German, right? Germans are global bonds because why? They were also issued in Jamaica, while the euro bond market as well. So it happens simultaneously, hence what makes them a global bond. So it's both local and in the euro bond space. If you go into your Bloomberg and type in German, on the description, you'll realize it says euro beside it because it's a euro bond. while simultaneously being a global bond because it's also issued in Jamaica. It's US denominated, hence why it's euro dollar. Because remember, it's issued in the euro space, you know, so it's still US denominated. But because it was also issued in the local market, hence why it's a global bond, right?
What would you classify like a Portland bond?
Portland would be a domestic bond. Well, no, actually, that'd been a foreign bond because Portland is registered in St. Lucia.
Oh.
They're not registered in Jamaica, but it's paper issued here. So technically in US dollars, so technically it would have been a foreign bond, technically, based on the definition of what a foreign bond is. But if NCB had issued the paper in Jamaican dollar, it would have been a domestic bond or a private paper. Everybody's clear with that? So we're going to go into time to maturity. Right, for the time to maturity, it's fairly simple. You have long-term bonds, which tend to be generally anything greater than 30 years. 30 and above, we call those long-term bonds. You have medium-term bonds, we kind of go in between, you say, 10 years and 30, anywhere in that range, we say those are medium-term bonds. The short-term bonds can generally be anything less than 10 years, right? Anywhere below 10, you know, you can call it short-term. Probably some people say 5, but I mean, really and truly, you can issue a bond till infinity, and that's actually a thing. The bond never matures. England bonds, there are some England bonds that do not mature. They're actually called, issued to perpetuity. They don't have any form of maturity date entitled to them. You have some corporate bonds that are like that as well. You have Barclays bonds, I believe, that are into perpetuity. They have no actual maturity date, but the interest rate is probably linked to a LIBOR, so it moves as LIBOR moves. So those are different type of ways you can actually issue a bond in terms of tenure, right? Then you have different types of features of a bond. You have callable bonds. So what a callable bond is that gives the issuer the right to take back the bond from you. So if you took my bond, I can just come to you and say, yo, I want back my bond. I don't want to owe you, I just call my bond. Granted, there's procedures to how that is done, but that's what a callable bond is. It gives the issuer the right to call back the bond. Then you have putable bonds, which essentially is giving the debt holder the right to take back their money. They say, yo, you give me this bond, I don't want it anymore, give me back my money right now. That's a feature that's offered to debt holders. So callable bonds are for the issuer. Putable bonds are for the debt holder. Now, you know, most people wouldn't normally say putable bonds because it's not that common, but really and truly, they do exist out there. Again, they're not very common, but they do exist. You have American options. Now, American option is essentially saying, hey, it goes in line with callable and putable bonds to the extent that it says, I can call my bond whenever I want to before it matures, even at the maturity date. And what I mean by a call, it means that I can give you back your money at some pre-agreed price right before maturity. So for example, if the bond was supposed to mature at a face value of 100, but I called it early and instead give you 93 after you paid $90 for it, you're only going to earn $3 plus whatever interest, instead of earning $10 and whatever interest. So that is why callable bonds aren't in the favor of the debt holders. But for a putable bond, for example, yes, say American option, you can put your bond essentially whenever you want. Yes, say the bond falls very low in terms of price. You bought this bond for 90, you're all the way at 70. You want to demand them, say, yo, here what? Take back this, want back my money at some pre-agreed price. And that is why the putable option is an attractive option for the debt issuers. You have Bermuda options, which essentially is saying that you can only call the bond at these specific times. So you can only call it after 2 years. You can only put it after 2 years. You can call it after 5 years, but there's a strict schedule that is followed that states when you can either call or use a put option on a particular bond. Then you have European. European is simply saying you can't do anything until at maturity. You can't call, you can't put the bond until maturity. You rarely find European bonds out there and American bonds. You rarely find them. You primarily find what they call Bermuda style options, which again there's a schedule that has to be followed to when I can call that bond, and those schedules usually state at what prices do I call those bonds. Everybody clear? Everybody,
Please, American.
American. Oh, I come in online. I come in. American bond is simply just them saying that they can call the bond whenever they want to call the bond. So the reason why an American option will be attractive from the call perspective is that, yes, say I issue my bond at 10% as Kerry had requested, but interest rates fall down to 2%. No, I can refinance this bond that I owe to Kerry at 2%. Hence, I'm going to call my bond right now, give Kerry back her money, and issue a new bond at 2%. That's why a callable bond is there. So that's what gives it that feature to issue us. So you find that most bonds will be called when the interest rates tend to decline because those companies are now able to refinance those bonds at much cheaper rates. Cool? Online, somebody had a question? Okay, so the question was asked for infinity bonds, how do people get back their money? You get back your money by selling it in the open market. That's really how we get back your money. So the question has to be asked, what is the yield of a bond? Some people may have noticed I never mentioned yield when we spoke about the 5 features of a bond. Because really and truly, a yield is not determined in the preparation of a bond document. Really, what the yield represents is the return an investor realizes on a bond. It represents all the future cash flows an investor will earn over the life of the bond, which is the coupon, plus any potential capital appreciation or depreciation to be earned. Now, the yield is really a mathematical hey, hello. So somebody asked a question, if you have an infinity bond, and again, I realize I use infinity, let me change it, let me use the actual correct term, it's called perpetuity bond, right? So I don't want to go to where I go say infinity bond. The correct term is perpetuity bond. And what happens is that the question was asked, if you have a perpetuity bond and the company goes belly up, how are you compensated? Essentially, belly up means that it defaulted. What happens is that just like any other company that mature in 2 years, if it does go belly up, you get whatever compensation which would be the collateral that would be backing that kind of bond. So if the collateral for the bond is, yes, say a building, then if the company does go belly up and you have a perpetuity bond, your compensation will be based on the nominal amount of that perpetuity bond that you have, as well as the value of that building when the liquidators find it. So you have liquidators in the market, KPMG, FTI, that will come out and say, all right, we're going to sell these collaterals so that we can pay you back your money. That is just how a perpetuity bond would function. So I don't want you guys to think of perpetuity bonds as any special bonds in terms of they act differently from other bonds. Just like what would happen if a regular bond defaulted, you'd get whatever collateral is behind it. Same thing for a perpetuity bond. If the issuer defaults, you get whatever collateral is backing that type of bond. So the question was asked, in the case of the Venezuelan bond that actually defaulted, is it that the person will get the collateral that's backing it? No. Remember, I said that they're going to liquidate it, meaning that they're going to have liquidators, which is why, as we go deeper into this, we're going to speak about collateral. If I come to you and say, I'm going to give you oxygen as collateral, you cannot monetize oxygen. Hence, it may be not a good collateral. But if I actually give you hard cash as collateral, you'd probably take it. Hence, the type of collateral has to matter when you decide that you're going to actually get a bond. That's a very good question, and we're going to actually go into those kind of things. Because by the end of this session, this week's demonstration is going to be, I'm going to ask everybody to determine who they're going to give money to. I've a nice real life scenario that kind of depicts what research goes through, and you guys are going to have to determine which company you're going to give Miss Paula Barkley's money to, right? Just so it's put some real stakes to it. Because this is the reality. When you're an analyst, you have to make these decisions. You have a fixed amount of capital, and you have a large amount of mouths to feed, meaning that people who want to borrow money. Hence, you have to ensure that you're giving your money to somebody who not gonna teeth it, and who can actually give it back when they say they're going to give it back. So most of these questions you're asking now will be answered in the demonstration later. So on the topic of yield, I was referring to the fact that I didn't mention the yield when I was speaking about characteristics of a bond, because technically what a yield is just a mathematical construct. It only represents what you are entitled to from a cash flow perspective, which is the coupon, plus whatever appreciation or depreciation you can earn. Now, we had mentioned price and face value before, but when the price is greater than the face value, which is a premium bond, you'll also find the coupon rate is higher than the yield. You can always go and double check this for yourself. You will always find it that if a bond is considered to be a premium bond, the coupon rate has to be higher than the yield. Reason why that is essentially saying to you that you're buying a bond for, let's say 101, essentially telling you that you're going to earn more in interest than you'd probably earn than the face value for the bond. So that is why a bond is considered to be a premium. The coupon rate is higher than the yield. That's what makes it a premium bond. A discount bond, which is where the price is less than the face value, is when the coupon rate is lower than the yield. And then at par, the coupon and the yield are equal. Now, again, the yield is a mathematical construct that is used to just simply represent the cash flow that you are entitled to over the life of a bond, while also incorporating any potential capital gains. Now, I will use the example so you can get a better idea what the yield is for a bond. Yes, say I issued to you guys a 0 coupon bond. Now, off the bat, most people say them not take no bond if you're not gonna give me no coupon. Now, what if I tell you that I'm going to take your money today, give me $70, I pay you no interest, but in 2 years' time, I'm going to give you back $100. Now, that sounds interesting now. So you're going to earn $30 essentially in 2 years from literally doing nothing and giving me your $70. Now, what that represents is that while you have no coupon, that bond has a yield. The yield is the future cash flow you're entitled to, which is essentially represented by the fact that you will be getting back $100 at maturity, while only paying $70 now. Hence why the yield is just a mathematical construct, or think of it like a balancing tool, essentially. That is what the yield really represents. So when somebody says a bond is trading at a particular yield, they're practically telling you that if you buy this bond, this is what you're going to earn per year over the life of the bond. And we're going to go into the different type of yields. So let me read this last part. So as a bond price changes over time, the bond's yield will also change. The yield is just a mathematical construct that ensures that at all times, all future cash flows, including accrued interest, is taken into consideration, plus all potential appreciation or depreciation of the bond, depending on the price it was purchased. So again, you can buy a bond at 101, but at maturity, it matures at $100, meaning that there's a price depreciation. Your yield would take that into consideration. You can buy a bond at 97, but it matures at 100. Your yield would take that into consideration. That you'd have had an appreciation, or you would have had a depreciation. That's what the yield represents. All right? You have different type of yields now. Given the different type of bonds, there are different type of yields associated with each bond. So what we're going to go into now is kind of the different terminology that define yields. So we have the yield to maturity, which is the total return anticipated on a bond if the bond is held until it matures. Yield to maturity is considered to be a long-term bond yield, but is expressed as an annual rate. So what this says is that if I tell you that the bond is yielding 6%, what does that mean? That means for the life of the bond, yes, 10 years, you're going to earn 6% per annum. Why are you going to earn 6% if the coupon is only the coupon is only 4? Why are you going to earn 6? What does that mean? You probably got the bond at a discount. Hence, the bond is going to go up in price as you get closer to maturity. Hence why the yield is greater than the coupon. So you earn a 4% coupon, but the yield is 6. That means that the price has to be lower than the par based on this relationship that we established before. Once the price is below the face value, it has to be a discount bond. Hence the yield has to be higher than the coupon. And this kind of shows you why this equation holds and why this has to be true. So again, you have a 4% coupon bond yielding 6%. That automatically means that probably the price is 94 and the face value is 100. Because what? You're going to see a price appreciation over the life of the bond, hence why the yield is higher than the coupon. So if you didn't get capital appreciation and you only got the coupon, this equation would not balance because you would not have been getting your full compensation. Hence, you would not be getting the face value. That is why the yield is there as just a mathematical construct. The reverse is also true. If you buy a bond at 115 and the bond is going to mature at $100, the yield is going to be lower than your coupon. So while you're getting these high cash flows now, you're going to have to take that loss in capital appreciation. Because remember, your price is going to pull back. Hence why the yield is lower than the coupon, which is why this relationship holds again. And that shows you that the yield itself is not an actual number that is determined by the issuer. It's an actual mathematical function that is just set there to balance these future cash flows and any appreciation or depreciation. Yes, your question.
So basically, it just means that bonds are always going to represent value.
Bonds always represent
Whether
value,
it's
yes.
in coupon or it's in the yield.
Right.
So they get back in some form of
Right. So you're always getting back your money in some way or form with a bond, which is some way or form with a bond, hence why it's considered to be a fixed income security. Right? That's kind of what makes it different from, for example, an equity stock. You know, they don't have to pay dividends. They can just take your money and just hold it for the rest of their life. They don't have to pay you about nothing. Right? Your only compensation is made where the stock price goes up and you're hoping that they can sell it at that price when it goes up. But a bond, again, is a contractual agreement. I must pay you whatever I said I'm going to pay you. The bond is worth this. That means at maturity, I'm going to give you back this. That's what makes it different from an equity perspective. Okay, so the question was asked, why does if I was to buy a bond at 96 and I know it's going to mature at 100, repeat the last part, why does the bond price affect the yield? Or why does the bond price on the market affect the yield? Okay, so the reason why the bond price on the market affects the yield is because you did not buy this bond at IPO, for example. You did not get this bond at issuance. Hence, you have to go to the market and actually buy this bond. Now, the reason why it's different is because if a bond was issued at par at the IPO, that means both coupon and yield would have been the same. But since the price has moved, whether up or down, the yield, being the balancing figure that it is going to move to keep this equation in line. Remember, these three equations have to hold for a bond to even make sense. These three equations have to hold. So once the bond moves away from its par value, the yield and the coupon are going to change. And the yield, again, represents the compensation, the actual per annum compensation you're going to get between the actual price that you bought the bond at and the underlying value that the bond actually has. I don't know if that answers your question a little better. All right, so let me use another example. You say you bought this bond. You said the bond was issued at a price of 100, and you bought this bond. You didn't buy it at the introduction level, but you bought it in the open market at 97, which is a discount to where you actually got the bond at. Now, if somebody bought the bond at par and they sold it to you at 97, they probably got, let's say, 2 coupon payments, but they also recognize a capital loss because they bought it at 100, probably get like 2 coupon and selling it for 97, right? So keep in mind now, the coupon payment you're earning per year is really supposed to compensate you for the life of the bond, which is still to maturity. But if you sell it early, you have to recognize that capital loss. And you get your 1 and 2 coupon. Now the person that bought the bond at 97 now, you said there's a 10-year bond, the person sold it at 2 years. That means I bought it and it has 8 years left. Now I have 8 years worth of coupon payments to earn, plus the capital appreciation from moving from 97 to 100. Hence why the yield at a discount bond is going to be higher than the coupon rate, because I have capital appreciation to earn from this bond, which is why as the price moves, the yield is going to move as well, because it has to be that balancing act between price and face value. What is it worth when it matures compared to the price you actually buy it at? So we're going into the different type of yields. So you have the yield to maturity again, which represents the total return anticipated on a bond if the bond is held until maturity. Yield to maturity is considered a long-term bond yield expressed as an annual rate. So if you buy a bond for 10 years, the maturity is 10 years. If you literally hold that bond for 10 years, you are going to earn X. X represents yield to maturity. In the scenario I gave a while ago where you have somebody buying a bond after 2 years gone at 97, what that yield to maturity is telling you that if you hold this bond now at 97, all the way for the remaining 8 years, this is what you're going to earn per annum. That is how the yield to maturity works. It literally says that if you hold a bond today until it matures, this is what you're expected to earn based on the future cash flows and any potential appreciation or depreciation in the price. The yield to call now, the yield to call essentially says that if the bondholder calls a bond, let's say 5 years in, right? It's a 10-year bond and I'm calling it 5 years in. This is the potential yield you will earn till then. Because remember, when you issued the bond initially with the coupon rate and the yield, it was me telling you that you're going to earn this for 10 years. I then come to you because there's a call option in the bond. I say, yo, here what? I cut it short, you're going to only get 5. Now, the yield to call would then must be lower than the yield you would have earned, or the yield to maturity in this case, because why? You bought this bond to earn 10 years worth of cash flows. Him cut it short and say, oh, they're going to get 5. He may pay a little premium, to kind of make sure you're not riot in the streets, but essentially he's saying to you, your cash flows are cut short, I can give you back your money sooner, hence the yield to call is there. And what I'm referring to again is, I mentioned the yield to call and the yield to maturity. When you combine these two together, you have a function called the yield to worst. Now, the yield to worst is really just a ranking mechanism, which is essentially saying this yield is the lowest possible yield that can be received on a bond that fully operates within the terms of its contract. What does that mean? If I have a callable bond, right? And I say to you, in 5 years' time, I can call this bond and I'm going to pay you, I issue the bond at 100, I'm going to pay you only, yes, say 101, which is a premium to the actual price. What that says to you is that I can give you compensation earlier for the bond, so you're missing out on 5 years worth of cash flow, but I'm going to give you an extra $1 on top of your money before. Does that fully compensate you for the money you get? No, it wouldn't. But the yield to worst is essentially saying to you, well, really and truly, this would be the worst option for you. But again, I could also call the bond instead of 5 years in probably 6 years. Again, that means the bond may not necessarily, 5 would be the worst, but 6 is also a bad option. So after you get past 5, yes, they didn't call it in year 5. Come year 6, they can call it. Hence, the 6-year yield to call would be the worst yield to call. So the yield to worst represents the worst possible yield you can get. So sometimes when you're looking at a bond, you'd want to know what is the yield to worst, because that means that this is the worst yield under all the scenarios that are out there. If it's a callable bond or a putable bond, these are the worst. This is the worst yield that you can get for a bond. The yield to worst doesn't have to be necessarily be bad. You have some yield to worst that are 6%. You have some yield to worst that are 7%. It's really a function of where they are calling the bond in terms of its life and where the price is currently. So that's how they determine the yield to worst. It's just a ranking mechanism. The thing that determines the yield to worst is really the yield to maturity, and the yield to call is a function between these two. Now, because we're speaking at a higher level, why we're not going into the gritty details of why the yield to worst is like this. Now, most people who are familiar with this topic will could easily tell you off the back of their head that, hey, if I know a bond is at discount, I know the yield to worst is at maturity. I know that. How do I know that? Experience. I did the maths and all those things. It's just me knowing that off the top of my head that the worst possible call date for a discount bond is maturity. Also, the worst possible call date for a premium bond is right now. Why is it right now? I can show you why it's right now the worst possible call date for a premium bond. Let's say you bought this bond at $115. Right? And I call this bond right now that worth $100. You instantly lose $15 just from buying this bond. Hence why the worst call date for a premium bond is the earliest call date. And it's the opposite for the discount bond. You say you buy this bond at $80 and you have to wait 40 years to get your $20. That is the worst possible situation you can find yourself in. If you can get the $100 today, you take it. Hence why the yield to worst for discount bond is the last call date. And again,
so every bond have a yield to worst?
Only bonds that have options have a yield to, no, that's not true. The yield to worst and the yield to maturity will be equal if there's no call option. Meaning that if the person cannot call the bond, then that means there's no need for a yield to call. Hence the yield to worst and the yield maturity will be the same. So I was just asked the question, does every single bond have a yield to worst? Technically, yes. Again, the yield to worst is just a ranking measure. So if there's no call option or any put option, it's just a straight regular bond, the yield to maturity and the yield to worst will be the same. But the moment there's an option in there, the yield to worst would then come into play by ranking all the possible, so that's essentially how the yield to worst actually works.
So once there's a callable or put.
Yeah, so once there's a call option or a put option or any form of option at all in a bond, any form of option at all, you literally say that there's a yield to worst because it then takes into consideration all these possibilities, and this is the worst yield that you can get. Again, it doesn't mean that it's going to be low. It just means that this is the lowest yield you can get. So if you have, for example, you have the option to earn a yield of 15, 13, 20, and 8. Now, obviously you choose the one that is 15, but the yield to worst is 8. Doesn't mean that 8 is bad. It just means that it is the worst of all your options. That is how you can think of the yield to worst. It's really just a ranking measure. Now, a concept that is not really used often, but is very important, is the current yield. The current yield is an investment annual income or interest divided by the current price of the security. What does that mean? When you buy a bond at 97 and you are trying to figure out what is my current yield and the fact that I bought it at 97, I'm going to tell you that the current yield is going to be a function of what price you bought it at. Now, there's going to be a disconnect between the yield to maturity and the current yield. Why is there a disconnect? The disconnect comes from the fact that the current yield takes into consideration the current price, while the yield to maturity takes into consideration the face value. That's the distinction between the two. Remember, the 5 features of a bond, price and face value are 2 different things. So when you're talking about the current yield, you're speaking about the current price you bought it at. When you're speaking about the yield to maturity, you're speaking about the actual face value at the end of the bond. Because remember, the yield to maturity, you only earn it if you hold this bond all the way to maturity. But the current yield is essentially saying what are you entitled to based on the fact that you bought it at this price, and if you sell it anywhere between there, hence why it's a function of your interest or in some case dividends for the particular security. Everybody clear on the difference between current yield and yield to maturity? Again, the yield to maturity just speaks to holding it all the way to maturity. Current yield is talking about at what price did you purchase the security at. So now, we're going to put on our analytical hats. Oh, wrong thing. So now we're going to put on our analytical hats. There's something called the 5 C's of credit. It is a common terminology. You can Google it whenever you feel like. This is called the 5 C's of credit. What are the 5 C's of credit? 5 C's of credit is essentially what you're going to assess a company by to determine is it a company you want to lend your money to, which in bracket means bond. Is it a company you don't want to lend your money to? That is how you determine. These are the 5 C's you use to determine, am I going to give this person my money or am I not going to give this person my money? What are the actual 5 C's? Character, capacity, capital, collateral, and condition. These are the 5 C's. Anybody that issues money are going to run these 5 C's. They have to do it. They have to create a checklist, which is why I say you guys need a notepad for this class. You have to make sure you look at your 5 C's to then determine, am I going to lend this person my money? So what does the C stand for? Character. This refers to the credit history, a borrower's reputation or a track record of repaying debts. Do they always pay the debt on time? Or do they come and say, boy, this money kind of rough. Can I pay you back next week instead? When next week come, him change him address, you can't find him. You know, that is the character of the borrower. Is that somebody you want to lend your money to versus somebody will probably come to you and say, yo, see your money here early, me now make you run me down or nothing. They pay the money on time. That would be a good creditor. On a side note, just so everybody's kind of on the same page, getting back your money early is not always a good thing. It's not always a good thing. And I'll explain to you why. In the case of in the case of an investor, if I decide that I don't need this money for, let's say 5 years, right? And the interest rates are high right now at 5 years. Let's say the interest rate is 13% for argument's sake, right? If I lend my money at 30% and I say I want this money back in 5 years, earning 30% worth of interest payments, and you then come to me and say, the thing went better than I thought. Here's the money early, and interest rates went down. I now get back my money, and I have to reinvest it in a lower interest rate, probably 6%, when before I would have been earning 13%, which is why not all the time getting your money early is a good thing. Especially when you think about planning. When you're planning out your money and your cash flows, if you said to yourself, say, I don't need this money in 5 years, and you get it early, you now have to rush and find somewhere else you can put this money. Hence why margin calls happen. And it's not necessarily a good thing, because when you have margin calls, you have to now invest this money in probably a lower yielding security than you were doing before. And the reverse side is also true. You don't want your credit extended, meaning you do not want to say, I owe somebody for 5 years, and then, that person, somebody owes you in 5 years, and they come to you and say, No, not that, but what they say is that, hey, I can extend, because interest rates came down, I can refinance this loan with you and extend another 15 years. Rather to move from a 5-year loan to now a 20-year loan. No, you're stressed out because you need the money in a 5 years. Hence, extending the money as well is also an issue. So you have to be very diligent when you're talking about being when you're giving or lending persons money. You have to be able to know the difference between reinvestment risk and extension risk. Reinvestment means you get the money early. Extension risk means you get the money at a later date, right? So back onto this course. So we spoke about character. Talk about now capacity. This measures the borrower's ability to actually repay the loan based on their income and the debts. So you assess the company's debt to income. Now, somebody who only earning, you say $10 can't come to you and borrow $1 million. That don't match up, right? Also, somebody who have earning $1 million and want to borrow $10, you even not go blink, you just got to throw him the $10. If you say yes, you're a very bad creditor. You can't just lend the person. So what about the character? But them just take your $10. Don't care if they earn $1 million, them take your $10 and gone. So what I just showed a while ago is that you cannot look at things in isolation. You have to look at everything collectively, right? Capital. How much money are they actually trying to raise? Now, for example, if they're raising money for a project, you don't want to know that, hey, the project costs X and the issuer is going to put probably a percentage of X towards it and then raise the other amount. Now, that don't seem too bad because that means that they're also exposed to this project, showing you that, hey, this may not be a bad opportunity at all to invest in. So it essentially tells you that it represents the capital the borrower puts towards a potential investment, or a large contribution by a borrower decreases the chances of default. So again, if they put some equity in it or put some money up front towards a particular venture, the risk becomes less because they're not borrowing as much from you. So if the thing goes belly up, your exposure is only 20% versus you lending them the entire money, which is 100%. So capital matters. Collateral, I use the example of the TV. Now, this collateral, I'll say, all right, I'm going to back my bond by this collateral of a TV. The question you have to ask yourself is there a market for this TV? How much people want to take home a Max Hub TV? You want a Max Hub TV? Yes. People said yes. Well, under the scenario that is not easily able to sell this Max Hub TV, then this may not necessarily be an appropriate collateral. Hence, you have to look at what kind of collateral is backing this type of security. You can't necessarily come to me and say, all right, that plant in the corner is going to be the security behind my bond. No, I'm sure you're not going to take that as collateral, but assessing the collateral would essentially allow you to determine, is the money you're lending to the person secured to the extent that if they do default, are you able to sell that collateral and get back your money? Hence, we go back to the scenario of liquidators. You want to ensure that when you liquidate this asset, you can get back your money. It don't make sense to lend somebody and the collateral is much lower than the actual security. So when you think about marginal accounts and lending money, that's a reason why we lend money based on a percentage of the total investment. So for our equity accounts, for example, if I'm only going to lend is 60%, it's reason because I want to ensure that the collateral, which is the full 100, is more than 100 I'm lending you. So if I have a $100 equity account and I take a margin against it at 60%, that means that if you, for whatever reason, run into hard times, I still have at least 40,000 clear of the loan amount. Hence why it's always a percentage. You want to ensure that your collateral is always higher than the money that you're lending out. Then finally you have the conditions. The conditions of the loan that speak about the 5 things that I had mentioned, which is like interest rate, the amount of principal raising, the influence of the lender's desires to the financer, to the borrower, sorry. So it's essentially saying, these are the terms which I'm going to want to borrow my money under. You can either agree to it or you cannot agree to it. But these are the 5 C's you have to look at. No, you cannot look at them in isolation. You have to look at them collectively. Not because the person has the capacity means they have the characteristic. Not because they have the capacity means they have the collateral. Not because they want to raise the capital means that they have good conditions. You cannot look at these in isolation. You have to look at everything together. This is your checklist whenever somebody wants to borrow money from you or you're considering buying a bond. These are the 5 things you have to look at. Now, these are the 5 C's of credit, but there are actually 2 more C's that are actually quite important from the perspective of a bond. The credit rating of a bond. Now, the credit rating is a categorization of a bond by a registered credit rating agency that assesses the credit worthiness of a bond. The credit rating of a bond can be viewed as the probability of default or the quality of the credit, the solvency of the issuer. Solvency means that do they have a lot of debt compared to equity, and it also looks at the likelihood of repayment. All of these things are the same thing as saying what's the credit rating of a bond. The internationally accepted credit rating agencies for bonds are Standard & Poor's, which is S&P, Moody's Investor Services, which is Moody's, and your Fitch Rating Agency, which is Fitch. On the right side of the screen, you can see I put the rating scale here to show you what makes a bond an investment grade bond versus what makes a bond non-investment grade, or what we consider to be high yield or junk bonds. Now, when you become a good investor, a good analyst, you'll just literally know the scale at the back of your head. I cannot look at the screen and I can tell you where a BA1 bond falls, which is a junk bond, which is Moody's scale. I can tell you that a double B plus is literally Fitch or S&P's highest non-investment grade bond. How do I know this? Because I do this on a daily basis. You know this out of experience. You can just literally know that these are where a bond falls. So what this really shows is that at the top, at the AAAs, these are the highest grade, right? Now you're going to have no problem lending somebody to have a AAA credit rating, right? Everybody's good at AAA credit rating, right?
Yeah, example one.
AAA credit rating. You can think of America. They have a A plus rating. Who? Germany. All right, so Germany is another A plus rating. But I have a question. Would you want to lend somebody who has an A plus rating? Why you look so afraid to answer?
Yeah.
You don't want to lend somebody an A plus rating, right? All right. So here's how I'm going to show you why the quality of the credit matters. Now, if you lend somebody who's an A plus rating, I promise you they're going to pay you 0.5% in coupon. They're going to pay you 0.5%. No, do you still want to lend somebody for 0.5%? No, you don't. Hence why being at the top is not necessarily a good thing from an investor's perspective, because you are being compensated for the risk you are taking. That is what the credit rate is allowing you to say. Hence, you're not gonna lend nobody with down yasso at C 0.5% because the risk is for sure high. Sorry. The risk is definitely high down here. Hence, along this scale, it kind of gives you an idea of how you're going to, what kind of interest rate you're comfortable getting for a bond when you issue it to a person. Yeah. Because Germany is that good of a credit, right? You have to pay Germany to lend them your money, essentially. Negative interest rates, right? That's essentially that's what they're saying to you. So, yeah, for persons online, Rod is making the point that you have to actually pay Germany for their bonds, and that is true in the sense that their yields are negative. So you have to pay Germany to borrow their money. They're that good of a credit. So when you're looking at this scale, you really want to be able to know this out of head. You want to be able to know a Moody's scale, an S&P scale, and a Fitch scale, because at the end of the day, when you look at these bonds, you're then able to determine that, all right, am I adequately being compensated for these risks that I'm inherited in these bonds? Now, I use S&P, for example, when I did to show you how they actually determine should I lend somebody my bond. S&P says, all right, I'm going to look at the country risk and industrial risk. Where are they operating out of? Jamaica, Africa, Germany, or United States? They look at the industry. Are they, in this case of COVID, are they an airline industry or are they an internet industry? So it's at no same time. But I mean, those are the things that S&P look at from a business risk profile, as well as competitive position. Are they first market leaders or are they dead last, like they're on the brink of failure? That is what S&P looks at for the business risk profile. They look at the financial aspect as well. Do they have good financial measures? You know, the debt to EBITDA are low, net debt is high, low. Everything looks low, looks good. That's what S&P looks at. Then they have other set of anchors that kind of allow you to determine, all right, what kind of rating am I going to give them? Other anchors include, do they make money from one thing or are they diverse? Now, if a company is diverse, you're going to more likely want to lend them, because that means that if one revenue stream shut off, them have others. Capital structure, do they have a lot of debt? If they do, then I cannot be worried about lending them because you don't want the debt load too high. but versus a company that has a low debt load, then maybe I'm more willing to lend them. Hence, that goes into the rating. Financial policy is the policy of the company that they're going to pay dividends and don't pay bondholders. If that's the case, then you're not going to lend them your money as a bondholder, but you probably buy the equity. Exactly. So that kind of shows that what may be a bad credit may be a good equity. And what's a good equity does not necessarily mean it's a bad credit. So those are the kind of things that they be thinking about as an analyst. Maybe from a perspective that, hey, I may lend them money, but I may not necessarily buy them equity. Also, they could say, I'm only going to pay interest. I'm not going to pay no dividends. Hence, you would not necessarily buy the stock, but you'd probably buy the bond. So that's what makes it, those are the things that we take into consideration when you talk about financial policy. Then liquidity of the bond, go back to the example, one bond worth $1 million versus $1 million bonds worth $1. The liquidity of the bond definitely goes into the implications of is it a good credit or not. Then management and governance. So is it that the CEO is also the president, also the HR, also the guardsman? Is he everything? No, that's not a good government structure. Does the management have any experience in the industry which they're operating in? You know, those are the things that they take into consideration. And then the last part is about comparable ratings. This bond operates in this space, or this company operates in this space. What are the other ratings for those kind of bonds? You look at the comparables to see if they all have these same business risk and financial risk and some variation of the modifiers, then okay, I know what kind of bond is going to come out to be. So if you look across the scope of industries, you realize those industrial bonds will have similar ratings, whether it be triple Bs or double Bs. For example, every energy bond, well, let me not say every, majority of energy bonds are considered to be high yield bonds just of where they are in the credit rating scales. You'll have exceptions. For example, I think Chevron is still up there in investment grade, if I remember correctly. It's still an energy company, but it's really, really good as a credit, hence why they may not necessarily be the same as everybody else. So it shows it that even though you're along the same industry, it doesn't always mean you have the same ratings, but it's a good way to start to get an idea of where you should be. And once S&P takes all these into consideration, they then determine, all right, this is the rate I'm going to give this bond. This is from a corporate level. Cool? Everybody's clear what he's looking at? This is what goes into S&P's determining. Moody's will have their own assessment. Fitch will have their own assessment. Barita has their own assessment. Everybody has their own way of determining what is a particular rating for a security. From a sovereign perspective, S&P also does the same thing for sovereigns. They look at the institution. Are they corrupt? Are they honest? Are they an open book? Or you have to fight them for financials? That has to go into your assessment. Economic assessment, are they growing? Are they not growing? Are they diverse? Are they only based on tourism? Do they only depend on oil? Economic assessment, you have to look at those factors to determine an institutional economic profile. Flexibility of performance, fiscal assessment, do their people pay tax or do they not pay tax? Are they able to generate tax from other parts of the businesses? For example, if you have a port business, are you able to get money from the importation of stuff? External assessment, how exposed are you to, let's say, are you a net importer versus a net exporter? If you're a net importer, that means that you depend a lot on external factors. If you're a net exporter, I mean, at that point in time, you're good. Then you look at the monetary assessment. For example, I don't know how many people know this, but Panama does not have a central bank. Panama does not have a central bank. They literally, their monetary policy is determined strictly by the markets. But then in the case of Jamaica, you have a central bank. It's possible.
Is that a good thing?
If it's good or bad, it is perspective. For the case of Panama, they are able to generate their US dollars strictly from the Panama Canal, as well as exporting gold and oil, and they have a lot of ways of bringing in USD, and they also use USD as their de facto currency. So really and truly, them no need to worry about a central bank. Their system, their economy takes care of itself.
Yeah,
With the Panama is a very good credit. Panama is one of the only Caribbean region credits that is investment grade at this point.
She's actually no.
Oh, right now, Corona is still a very good credit because of, so what you look at is, for example, in the case of Panama, you're saying what kind of revenue do they generate? Are they diverse? They are diverse. So while you would have seen a slowdown in global trade and that kind of aspect, they still be able to export commodities. So that diversification of the revenue source for a country is very important. DOMREP is just like that as well. They do exportation of energy, as well as they have exportation of coal, and there are a lot of and they do tourism. I mean, they have a very diverse economy. Take Bahamas, for example. I mean, Bahamas, God help their soul, they went through Hurricane Dorian last year, then COVID come this year. So the tourism product got hit last year with Hurricane Dorian. Then now them get hit again with COVID restriction of Bahamas. So now they get hit both times, hence why they saw a significant credit downgrade for them, because there's no diversification in their revenues. So this is what the different rating agencies have to look into when they're giving a credit rating for a particular country.
Over time, your credit rating can change?
Over time, your credit rating can change, yes. Your credit rating change as your situation improves or deteriorates, your credit rating will move along the lines of that. Oh, I'd made mention to credit link notes before and tried to explain why is it that as credit ratings go up, yields go down. As I said, if you lend a bond at AAA, you're going to have to lend them at 0.5 because they're that good of a credit, you're not going to get much compensation. Hence, as your credit rating goes up, you are less risky, hence you don't need to issue at the same interest rate as somebody who's riskier. So for a credit-linked bond, as you go up the scale, your yield is going to go down or the interest rate is going to go down. As you go down the scale, you become riskier, hence your yield or your interest rate is going to go up. That kind of shows you the dynamic in terms of how the credit rating is linked for those kind of bonds. So the final C you have to take into consideration is credit spread. Now, we use the term often, but most people don't really know what a credit spread really is. The credit spread is the difference in yield between the risk-free rate in quotation and another debt security of the same maturity but different credit quality. Now, what does that mean? Let's say, for example, the United States, nobody's worried about the United States defaulting, hence they are considered to be a risk-free rate in quotation. So if I'm going to issue a bond in line with a US economy bond, I have to issue that bond because at a weaker credit quality than the US, I have to issue that bond at a spread, meaning at a higher yield or interest. I remember at the beginning, yield and coupon or interest is the same. So I have to issue that at a higher yield from the US bond. And as that bond trades, the more riskier I become, the higher the credit spread. The less risky I become, the smaller the credit spread. So that kind of shows it that if you look at a bond and you say the credit spread is wide, you can say, boy, so this is not necessarily a good thing. But if the credit spread is small, it may be a better situation. It may be closer. You can think of it that the bond is trading close to the risk-free rate, which is a good thing for the bond. That means essentially close to being risk-free. Now, something of importance is that it should be noted that the credit spread can widen when there's an overall risk-off in quotation, meaning that persons are moving away from the bond or moving away from a risky bond, and it does not necessarily indicate a deterioration in the credit. Now, I put this point in here because what we saw happen in March 2020 is that when there's a trade-off or a risk-off of risky securities in the global market, credit spreads went very wide. But in truth, those bonds or those issuers of those bonds, their credit situation did not deteriorate. Just that persons weren't necessarily in the mood to be taking on any risk. People didn't understand COVID at the beginning, so they were just scared and wanted to move their money away from risky stuff. Hence, the credit spread significantly widened. That means that what? Doesn't mean that the credit of the sovereign or the issuer itself doesn't mean that the issuer itself became worse. It just means that, hey, people may not necessarily want to be rushing towards these risky assets. And you can think of, again, the credit spread to represent the yield. If the credit spread goes up, that means the yield went up. And if the yield goes up, it means it's riskier by definition. But you can't look at that in isolation. Again, just like the 5 C's, just like the credit rating, just like the credit spread, you cannot look at these things in isolation. You have to look at it collectively. I'm going to backstep a little bit and kind of go into why you cannot look at the credit rating in isolation. Our credit ratings issued on a daily, weekly, monthly, or annual basis. They tend to be done on an annual basis. Now, I'm going to give you a little historical story of why you cannot look at the credit rating by itself. Everybody will be familiar with the 2008-2009 financial crisis, considered to be the great financial crisis, right? What happened in that time is that investors literally just believed the credit rating agencies. Moody said this is an A bond. Moody says so, I'll buy it. S&P says that A bond, I'm gonna buy it. And that is what happened. People just believe the credit rating agencies, completely disregarded all the other C's. Just literally trusted the credit rating agencies to adequately report to them what is the risk in a bond. Now, are the credit rating agencies at fault? To some extent, because at the time, what happened is that the issuers of bonds weren't that necessarily open with these credit rating agencies. So think of it like somebody coming in the office and say, yo, tell me everything about your business. You're not gonna do that necessarily. So they weren't able to get full information about certain things, but because they were paid to give credit ratings, they did what they were paid to do. They gave credit ratings. So what you found is that credit rating agencies, they just issued credit ratings for everything, just literally pushing out credit ratings. Everything looked good, everything looked fine, until it wasn't. And everything went kaboom. And that what led to the great financial crisis. Specifically, what actually led to it was the fact that people were looking at bonds due to same financial engineers I mentioned earlier. They essentially took a lot of bad credits and put it all together. I made it a good credit, but doesn't change the true nature. It's still bad credits all compiled together. But because of the combination of all these things, it was able to slap it as a good credit because you had more cash flows behind the one bond versus standalone. You now have, instead of having 2 cash flows, you now have over 40 cash flows supporting this bond. That makes it a better credit. But then, so at that point in time, instead of issuing these bad credits single-handedly, you put them together, they become good, better credits. So what you find is that you cannot look at the credit rating alone and just say, I'm going to lend my money to this person. Because again, this is what happened in 2008, where a person solely relied on credit rating agencies to tell them, should I give this person my money? Is they a good credit or not? You cannot do that. And again, it goes back to why the 5 C's of credit, you cannot look at them in isolation either. Can't look at capacity and don't look at capital. Can't look at character and don't look at collateral. Everything needs to be looked at together. This is a full checklist when you're talking about bonds or any form of credit. So, okay, so in the case of adverse events, so the question was asked, would a credit rating agency change their credit rating in the case of adverse events, such as the one that we're in right now, which is COVID? The answer is they don't have to unless it's a situation where it is actually quite dire. Meaning, for example, if you do your analysis every, let's say, January, and COVID happened in March, but you believe that what's affecting the company in March or how it's going to affect the company is not something that's going to significantly impact them, I won't necessarily put out a new credit rating on the company. I'll probably put out a new report stating how we think they may be affected and what may cause them to get a downgrade or an upgrade, but I won't necessarily change my credit rating. To kind of go a little bit deeper, you have what you call through the cycle and at the moment credit analysis. So what does that mean? You're supposed to look at credits not based on current situation, but the actual, what you call it, the business cycle. Look at it through both recession and both expansion. You must be looking at it from all perspectives, not just in the good time, but also the bad time. And you take those into consideration when you issue a credit rating. If you only look at the good times, you're only going to have good credit ratings. If you look at it only in the bad time, you can only have bad credit ratings. And that up and down thing is not a good, it doesn't make you look very credible. You look like the boy that cried wolf. Oh, times are bad. Yeah, man, it's a bad credit. Times are good. Yeah, man, it's a good credit, man. You can buy it. That not gonna help your credibility. You're supposed to be looking through the cycle versus at the moment. So that again shows you why you can't rely solely on the credit rating agency. They are even though that they're paid to do that, we pay our auditors, but they're going to be honest. If your financials look bad, they're not gonna tell you say it look bad, and they're going to publish it out there that it looks bad, even though you pay them. They still have a responsibility or a fiduciary duty to speak honestly about it. But at the end of the day, you can't rely solely on what they see or what they determine. Hence why you have to do your own credit assessments. So to go back to the credit spread, again, credit spreads are usually used in terms of basis points. 100 basis points is 1%. So when somebody said, I want 200 basis points, that means I want 2%. I can think of it like that. That's the way you should really look at it. And the credit spread really represents the level of riskiness and the quality of the credit. Again, the higher the spread means that it tends to be riskier. The lower the spread means that it's less risky. But again, as it should be noted, the credit spread is not end all and be all. It doesn't necessarily represent the actual risk in the credit. So from here, we're going to do a live demonstration. So this week's class is going to be one that is very interesting for multiple reasons. It's going to be interesting because you guys are going to get up and determine should you lend this person your money. Get up, yeah, as in you're going to literally. So Miss Paula Barkley, our lovely general manager, comes to you and says, we have a fixed amount of money that we can lend. Fixed. I won't state the amount because the amount doesn't matter, but it's a fixed amount you have to lend. So I painted 3 different companies for you guys, and you guys are going to determine both online and in class which company are you going to lend your money to.
And why?
And the why, you have to tell me why. You can't just want to give her Miss Barkley money and not tell her why. So we're going to go through all the different aspects of it. So first I'm going to tell you a nice story about the companies. See if I can shorten it. This is why I need everybody to have the pen and paper. You guys online, are you seeing the screen? Because everybody needs to actually contribute to this part. This is what it's going to take to see what it's like being in the actual research scenario. You have a fixed amount of money and you have 3 companies vying for that money. And this is the actual reality out on the road. So you have to do a full credit assessment. So you start with company A, right? Company A, this company operates in the technology industry for the past 15 years, and they are based in China. They focus on creating innovative technology, which they have successfully in the past been able to patent and copyright. They are currently on the cusp of another era-defining technological breakthrough, but the cost of equipment is currently expensive due to trade wars between nations. They currently have a revolving loan facility with international banks, while they have also issued bonds globally before. They have never defaulted on their bonds, and they are primarily using the revolving loan for working capital purposes. The company is also not opposed to issuing stock or issuing equity. This is company A, right? Who would lend money to company A? There's no wrong or right answer, but would they lend money to company A just off the bat right here?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. You just say yeah. You say let's give him Barkley number, Barkley money.
No, but
There we go. You need more information.
Like those riots in
I
Exactly.
want to know about this trade war.
All right, good. At least you guys are just going to give her the money, so and not give her the shop. All right. You have company B now. Where's all right now? Work with me. Company B. So company B says this company has been operating in the energy industry for the past 67 years in the United States. They are considered market leaders in every way, in every measure. In the past, they have been able to successfully generate substantial net profits due to their ability to operate an efficient business. But since the global decline in commodity prices, their margins have become very thin. The company know that they're providing an essential resource, so they're not too concerned about thin margins. That don't bother them at all. They have never defaulted, but they have deferred payments. They have deferred coupon payment before, and they have been able to successfully refinance their debts at haircuts. What does haircuts mean? That means that they said they can give you back $100, then give you $80 instead, right? But this company just made a breakthrough in generating energy that will see them have a significant decrease in their costs, which means that they will be able to generate higher revenue at a lower cost and greater profit. This is company B. I see some people shaking their head and saying no. All right.
I would choose company A.
Huh?
Like haircuts.
I would choose company A.
You choose company A over company B? All right, cool. Remember that answer, you say no to B. Remember that. So, any more question? You have a next question? You guys online, you guys are all right? You guys are following so far?
I demand.
So we went through company B and company C. We're going to go through company C, now the final company. Now, this company is a startup company that operates in the retail space, specifically in the e-commerce sector. They are based in Timbuktu, which is a real place. Don't laugh, it's a real place in Africa, guys. There we go. And they have been operating for only 3 years. Their business model is simply providing global delivery services from your favorite restaurants anywhere in the world within 3 hours of ordering. Now that everybody look up, you really love something like that, right? Exactly. You'd love. Yes, I made this up.
Very good storyteller.
So if you could get any food anywhere in the world in 3 hours, trust me, you'd love that. They're still going to be good, right? The subscription base has grown exponentially, moving from a few 100,000 users in 1 year to now boasting over 450 million users globally while growing constantly. Due to the recent demand for their online services, they're in need of additional server space to accommodate the online traffic while ensuring that they're able to afford the additional delivery capacity. And now, they're not only service in Timbuktu, they're service in Jamaica, Germany, Cuba, so they need to be able to accommodate those. So they have been primarily funded from angel investors, hedge funds, and private equity investors. These are what you consider to be preference shares, meaning there's a combination of both equity and debt. So it's not pure equity, it's not pure debt. So they technically have never raised debt. This will be the first time they are raising debt in any magnitude. Part of the proceeds will go towards paying back the equity, buying back equity from the company, from the seeding investors. This is company C.
So we're assuming that is possible, right? They can deliver the food.
No, so they have been doing it successfully. So company C, they have been successfully delivering the food within 3 hours of ordering all over the world. These are your 3 companies. So I'll ask you based off this, both online, I want 2 answers online and 2 in the room. Which company would they lend to based on what you're seeing right here?
You want me with food, so.
I want it with the food? All right, so Sean says company C is who you give his money to. Remember, this is Miss Paula Barkley money, All right, and your personal money. This is Barita money you're lending out. One person online, who would you lend your money to? Company A, B, or C? Anybody online? Everybody afraid? Nobody knows.
Is that residence school? I would probably more information.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, more information.
Okay, so Rochelle online said company C, but she said she needs to do some more research into it to find out, all right, am I really going to lend them the money? And that's fine, and that's a good approach. So let's get into the actual credit assessment now. Yeah. So what we went through was character. What we're going to look at now is capacity, right? So I have a drop-down menu right here that allows us to go through all the different companies together. Everything just changes magically. So we built this so that we are able to see all the different features of this particular credit for a particular company. So what we're going to go through now is capacity. So we're going to look at this company, they give us their financials, we're going to say, all right, cool. How much debt does company A currently have? They have 30 million. These are in millions, so this is 30 million. They're paying, this is an amortizing bond, because they pay 6% towards principal, 4% towards interest, and they currently have 8 million on their books. Shall I use thousand? It's confusing me. So based on their last financials, they have what? They have 83 million in revenue. Their gross margin is 49 million. Their EBITDA is 32 million. EBITDA again is just earning before interest, adding back depreciation and assets, right? Their assets depreciate at a rate of 20%. They currently pay taxes at 25%. And the project that they're planning to finance, remember this is company A, so they're trying to get technology that is going to be technologically breakthrough. It's going to be at the cusp of an era-defining technology. And it only costing them 7 million. So we have used a bunch of ratios at the bottom right here under the covenants to kind of determine what kind of capacity, do they have to actually lend money. If I use total debt to EBITDA, their EBITDA is 32. I multiply that by 3. Hence, I'm willing to lend them at best 97 million based on this ratio. Everybody following? So, all right, I'll go over it again. That's fine. So the total debt to EBITDA is just a covenant or a ratio that we use to determine how much debt am I willing to give them. It's really a function of saying EBITDA multiplied by 3 is going to tell me my total debt. It's a ratio. It's just a literal ratio. I want to see how much debt can they manage based on this ratio.
Manage based on if they can repay.
Capacity, no, it's capacity we're looking at now. It's a capacity, right? Can they actually, do their financials allow them to repay it? Cool. So we determine the minimum of all these ratios because we want to lend them. We don't want to give them the max. In case anything happens, we want to give them the minimum. Hence, the minimum of all these ratios, where is it? The minimum, why is it telling me 62? Oh, now I remember why. So the minimum I'm willing to lend them is 92 million. But they already have 30 million in debt. So I'm assuming that they're going to have to repay this 30 million, hence why my minimum I'm willing to allow to lend them is 62. Because the maximum debt I believe that they can take on is 92 million, and they already have 30, hence the max capacity is 62. And so we're going to get into those soon. So this is how the capacity is determined for the different companies. So let's look at company B.
Jesus.
That don't look good.
No.
That don't look good. Company B, they already have 500 million in debt.
500 million.
Them already said them not paying no principal. Them only paying the interest of 7%, and they only have $2,000 in cash. $2 million in cash.
They're broke.
That's why
They have no.
Yeah.
Sean asked the question if this is the defaulter. None of my companies have ever defaulted. They have given haircuts. They've never defaulted. They've never defaulted. They've only given haircuts. Right? Anybody know who this look like?
Yep.
Yes, I love what you say look like. They just sell. Right, so the point was being made that even though they have not defaulted by right, they have not defaulted. The fact that they've given haircuts doesn't really make them that much of a better character, right? So this company, they have revenues of 100. You can see the margin is thin. Their gross margin is only 50,000, and then their EBITDA is only 25. So these are not necessarily the hottest financials. Hence, based on the lowest I'm willing to lend them, which is 58, and they already have 500,000, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily want them. Their capacity cannot take on any more debt, essentially, right?
So they probably can't afford to pay.
They can, well, we're going to find out, because it's just capacity, right? Maybe you have to look at all of them together. You can't look at them in isolation. Then company C, which is a small company, Sean rooting for him, man with the food, rooting for him. Current debt is just $1 million. Because they're relatively startup, they have to pay a higher interest rate because why they're technically riskier, being that they're a startup. So they're paying 13% towards debt, and their interest rate is 9%. They already have $10 million in cash. I mean, if they wanted to pay back the money right now, they really could if they wanted to. Cool? Their margins are really good. 60,000 right here, 50,000 gross margin, then paying 5% towards tax, right? Those are all. So based on these measures, the minimum I'm willing to lend them is 45. They already have $1 million. So, I mean, they can literally take on $44 million worth of debt, right? So these are, we have looked at the characteristics, we have looked at the capacity. Now we're going to look at the capital that they're trying to raise. Cool? So for company A is trying to raise how much money? They're trying to raise 45 million. Cool? What is my capacity based on my model? 62. So I mean, it looks good, right? Nobody not complaining right here. Company B, they want to raise 30 million, but my capacity is 44. Kind of rough, right? Kind of rough. Then and I actually should make mention to the fact that company A, they're trying to raise 45, but the project only costs 7 million. Why would they want to raise 45 then? Yeah. The question is because they probably want to repay. Interest rates probably went down. So them say, yo, let me refinance this. Let me call this bond because I can get a better interest rate now compared to back then. So they're going to pay off 30,000 out of the 45, leave them with 15, pay off the 7 right here for the project and leave a little money extra for working capital. That is how companies tend to do stuff, right? So company B, they just want to raise a mere 30 million, but and the project costs only 15 million. And I'm done, so they're not paying no principal right now, so they will look upon that. They're not paying nothing towards that, right? And then company C, they are thinking about raising, company C, they want to raise 35 million, but the project costs 25 million. But again, nobody's not really concerned. They already have 10 million in cash and the debt is $1 million. So, I mean, nobody's concerned. All right, here's this part now. We're going to go into collateral. So Collateral for company A is 100 million. So again, they're trying to borrow 45 million. They already have 30 million in debt, which is a total of 75 million. And I'm willing to lend them 62 million. But the collateral that they have is 100 million. So they're trying to borrow 45 and the collateral is 100 million. Would you lend this person your money? You shake your head and say, yes, all right, cool. Because why? The collateral is much higher than the amount that they're trying to raise. And I should use this opportunity to state that the collateral for one bond doesn't mean that it's collateral for all the bonds of the same issuer. Each bond will have its own collateral, even if it's the same issuer, right? So when you're looking at this collateral, you don't need to take into consideration necessarily what debt they already have. Those are backed by their own collateral. You're focusing on this money you're trying to lend right now, and the collateral that they're giving you is worth 100 million. But if they default, it takes 2 years to get back your money. Yeah, the room gets silent. For wait 2 years to get back your money. Cool? Company B. Company B have a collateral worth $1 billion.
Wow.
And it takes 1 year to liquidate. So even if them default, what you worry about? This billion can take care of the debt them have, the debt them trying to raise, and can pay even extra.
Yeah.
So all the people that are writing off B, everybody look interested now. The collateral is much higher than what the debt that they have on their books. So you see why you have to look at these things collectively. You can't look at them in isolation. You have to look at everything together when you're making any form of credit assessment. And then company C now, who I remember Sean said he liked, collateral worth 5 million. That no, they would have they would have in the collateral because why? They're a startup company, so they can't have any form of collateral.
Yeah.
So they're trying to raise 35, but they only have a collateral of 5 million. But do you not lend them? Why would you not lend them? Their debt is 1 million. They already have cash of 10 million. The reason why they're trying to raise money is that they don't have enough cash to actually pay for the project, which is 25, which is why they're actually borrowing the money.
You would pick.
I would pick?
No,
Generally?
I'm saying you'd pick company C if you have hopes of this company.
You
get what I mean?
You should pick the company based on all the criterions.
If somebody does say, oh, let me pick company C.
Well, we figure out at the end of this, we determine who we're going to actually lend the money to. So what we have looked at a while ago, we've gone through characteristics, we've gone through capacity, we've gone through the capital they're trying to raise, and we've gone through collateral. Is now look at the conditions under which you want to lend the money to. So company A says that they want to borrow the money just for 3 years. They want to fully amortize it, and they're only willing to pay interest rate of 3%. Now, would you lend this company your money? I mean, you can take it 2 years to liquidate the collateral. They're only borrowing it for 3 years. If they default, I mean, okay. They're fully doing amortization, meaning that you're getting both the principal and interest rates right now. And then you're only paying interest rates of 3%. Do you feel adequately compensated at 3%? That depends on who you're asking, right?
Yeah.
Company B, their terms are, they want to borrow your money for 5 years, they will only pay interest, and they're willing to take a 6.5% interest rate. The risk is higher, right? The risk is higher with company B, but the reason why the interest rate isn't so high is because they have a very nice collateral backing this, right? So I mean, at that point in time, everything to take into consideration. And finally, company C they want to borrow your money for 10 years.
Alright, you just
10 years.
company C nice and then boom.
No, but why is company C no longer nice? The man that want to borrow your money for 10 years, a startup company, where them going to pay you back soon now?
It's like 13% interest.
Thank you. 13% interest the man that might give you.
But
Yep.
5 years liquidation?
No, but he's saying 5 years liquidation, so hence why you have to take everything into
That's what
consideration.
I'm saying. You're
So-
saying 13% interest rate, but 5 years liquidation or something happens.
So we're going to look at,
Startup company, so we have to really take that into consideration.
yeah. So for the last thing I put on the sheet, just so you get an idea of what kind of risk you're looking at. I put the credit ratings for the different rating agencies, so you guys can use as reference. The company A has a credit rating of BB minus, Baa3, and BB plus for Fitch, BBB plus for Fitch. Now, for guys who would know the scale, we know that this is an investment grade bond. These are all investment grade, right? So what I tend to use to kind of tell me where it is on the scale, I know that 3 letters is good, 2 is bad, B's are bad, C's are terrible.
And D, you dead.
No man, if you reach D, it doesn't make sense. So again, just so you guys can use it for reference, 3 is good, 3s are good, B's are bad, A's are good, C's are always bad. I don't want any D's. The reason why C's are bad is because you can have triple C's, which is 3 letters, but C's aren't good. So that is why you have to be able to reference that, okay, where are you on the scale? You can think of it like a scoring card in high school. You always want A's, you always want B's. Nobody wants C's. But that is how you can look at it. And again, 3 letters, 3 A's are always better than 3 B's. And 3 B's are always better than 3 C's. So you can always use that as a reference to determine where you are on the rating scale. Cool? So I added a little twist just so I can get everybody's attention to it. I added a profitability analysis. So you're going to go to Miss Barkley and say, this is what you're going to earn from each transaction on a per annum basis. We go to our sister company, Cornerstone Trust and Merchant Bank, and they said they're going to lend us money at 2%. We're going to earn an interest rate of 3%. Hence, the net profit per annum is going to be 1%. Hence, that equates to 450,000, right? And the life of it is going to be 3 years. I keep that in mind. This is 3 years. So you're technically earning 450,000 every 3 years. Cool. Company B, you're earning 1 million every year. And it's a 5 year, so you can do the math to find out how much you're actually earning on a per year basis for Miss Barkley. And then finally, Company C, 3 million a year you're earning. 3 million a year for 10 years. Tell me where you can get a better deal than that. 10 years you're gonna earn 3 million. And this is USD, guys, and not JMD where I'm with a USD we're doing. So now, based on all the information you guys are being given, I want you guys to tell me, who would you lend your money to? You have one set of money. You only can pick one company. You have to determine who are you going to lend your money to.
So you're choosing?
This is Miss Barkley's money. Yes, this is Barita's money. What is it? All right, that's a very good question. And that's actually something I hope nobody would have asked. The question was asked, what is Miss Barkley's risk appetite?
Yeah, because I was thinking about
That is a very, very good question.
It was based on somebody's risk appetite.
No, so I did it. This is just straight quantitative aspect of research.
Yeah, but you'd have to
None of this I looked into. None of this I made mention of the qualitative part of research, which is what is the risk profile. So when you're doing research, you essentially have to look at who am I making this recommendation to? Does it fit their risk profile? Are they aggressive, conservative, moderate? So it determines, so it really does depend on who the risk profile of the person is. No, I didn't expect anybody to ask me, so I didn't create one in my head. But just so that it still stays hard, yes, say she's moderate. Right in the middle. So you can't wiggle your way out of this one. She's moderate risk profile.
Let's see, A and B.
I say A.
All right, so you say A, right? One person say A.
I say company A.
Company A too. Online, what are you thinking?
Can you go back to A again? Yeah, on A.
You say A as well?
Say A. For the more time, 2%.
Hey, Rochelle. You,
I mean, if you're a risky person, it's like
Yeah, if you're open to the billion and
okay. So Rochelle was making the point that for company C, she would pick company C because they scored higher based on the 5 C's for compared to all the other bonds, right? But remember, Rochelle, we stated that the 5 C's aren't the only thing that they look at. For example, the credit rating for company C is high yield, which means it's a junk bond technically, compared to the other bond. I think company B is down in the gutters. Company, you don't even want to go down here, so for company B, right? So again, you have to look at all these things in collective perspective.
Given the risk appetite, it definitely. Given the risk appetite,
You wouldn't, okay. So I got 2 A's. I got 2 A's.
Adequately on based on the interest rate.
You're not being compensated for something like this. But I mean, at the end of the day, the rate of the collateral is there, which is what kind of brings it down. So I got 2 A's in the room. I got Russia to say C. I think Heather said A as well. I want 2 more answers. I want to know why nobody will lend company B. What's wrong with company B?
B is the only answer. B is the only question.
Why wouldn't you guys lend B? What's wrong with B?
I would lend B based on my risk profile because
I said it's Miss Barclay's money. I said it's Miss Barclay's money. You can go to Miss Barclays. Yes.
You would pick B.
I'm not the one doing the assessment.
Why would a company be so
we're gonna make
comfortable
it
with so
easy
much
because
debt?
it says moderate.
Okay.
Let's go in the middle.
So the question was asked, why would a company be so comfortable with this amount of debt? Why are you guys comfortable lending digital money?
I am stressed.
I am not.
So no, the real answer is that it's not because I use digital because digital is similar to this company in terms of a high debt load, but they have been able
To pay the interest.
to get money from the market and refinance, and they're able to even
This is
pay
the
it
one
on.
that has major market share. And
So right, so that's another thing I'm taking into consideration, the characteristic. What are they? They're market leaders in every way. That means that there's no company in this industry that can test them.
This is digital.
It's an energy company that operates in the United States for 6-7 years. This is not digital. Just for clarity, you know? This is not digital. This is company B. So again, rather making the point that company B is the only answer, and I mean, truthfully, and they kind of go to your question, why do a company feel so comfortable with this amount of debt? Because at the end of the day, they are still servicing it. They're still paying 7% towards interest. You're getting your interest payments. If anything goes up, you have a large collateral base that you have to be worrying about. It's 5 years. You're earning 6.5. Why is this thing moving so? You're earning 6.5. I mean, why would you not lend company B? And that's not saying that company B is the right answer per se, but why would you really not lend company B?
I would with my money, but not all the money.
So, any more answers from online? Any more answers from online? Which company would you lend your money to? Also, you have to take into consideration the profitability analysis. You're earning 3 million a year with company C. You're earning 1 million a year with company B. And you're only earning a measly 450 with company. Yeah, that's 450. Small little money. 3 years too. So if you multiply that by 3, probably what that? Barely over $1 million. I remember it says Parliament, we have to keep on the lights, we have to pay people's salary and all these things, so we have to make the money, make the money work for you. So, I want one more answer online. I think I got 2 A's and a B.
I said B too.
You said B? Okay, you said B too. I'll make sure Paula talk to you tomorrow about B. You gonna stick with C, Sean? Alright, Sean says he's gonna stick with C. And for C is 10 years. Putting on the money for 10 years. You're earning 3.8. I mean, if I was to pick, I'd probably go with C as well. I mean, really and truly, you're being adequately compensated for the type of risk you're getting. Only thing is that I'd probably have to go Timbuktu to see what kind of operation I'm doing. I'd probably have to use them services. But I mean, of all these bonds, I'd definitely go with C. Meaning because I'm earning 3 million a year for 10 years at this interest rate of 30% in a low interest rate environment. The collateral is weak, but the capacity is high. So the risk of them defaulting is really low. They already have enough cash to actually pay down their debt. I would definitely go with C. From a profitability analysis, rather saying no.
You're completely wrong. B is the only answer.
Why is B?
Established companies, essential service. They have ample collateral to cover you. They hear consideration, they don't want to play that game again. You're lending them for 5 years, right? So, and you're covered. When you bond investing, it's different from equity investing. Equity investing is a company going to prosper.
Right.
The question with bond investing is the company going to be there, right? So you're lending for 5 years. You have an energy company. You have collateral. You feel good. What you're not appreciating is political risk involved in the other companies. This company is great. It's wonderful. That's C, right?
Yeah, C.
It's in Timbuktu. 10 years. That simply means that within that 10 years, some African dictator is going to take money. All of that. All of that
it's
cash
in
and balance sheet
e-commerce
is now
too.
going to go to Switzerland. Right? And that company is going to get taken over. It's done. 10 years in Africa. Done.
And then 5 years for liquidation.
Company A is what, China?
Oh, okay. I'll summarize it. So Raul was saying B is the correct answer, and he made 100% very good points. Raul is saying that this company has been around for 67 years, offers an essential service, is a market leader, has collateral way more than the debt. Their established position in the United States, so the political risk is very low, well, depending on how you view political risk, compared to Timbuktu in Africa, where, I mean, nobody here has ever been to Timbuktu. I'm sure you can't find it on an atlas. You don't know how that country works and operates. So, really and truly, you'd really want to go with Company B. And that was the point where Raul is making, and he made very good points on every measure, right? So, what this really shows is that what company you'd lend the money to is really a function of a couple of things. One, whose capital is it that you're lending it to? Meaning that whose money are you lending? Are you lending Raw's money? Are you lending Haughton money? Or are you lending Barita's money? Who are you lending the money for? What kind of time horizon is the company looking for? Does the company want to be invested for 10 years? I mean, that's pretty long. Or they want to be invested for 5 years. I can say 5 years old, but can't say 10 years old. Anything can happen in 10 years. In Africa. And then Company A is 3 years, and I mean, it's small, but at the same time, you can probably do a little better. It's 450 million for Company A compared to 1 million for Company B, and it's just an additional 2 years. So, I mean...
So, that net profit, is that Chinese accounting or generally accepted?
this is GAAP, generally accepted accounting.
It says a Chinese technically.
That's Company A, but yes, it is. So the real takeaway from this one is that you have to really look at everything collectively when you're making an assessment to determine, am I going to lend somebody my money? You have to look at everything collectively. And even after looking at everything collectively, you have to decide to yourself, whose money am I lending? I mean, if you're an aggressive investor, you definitely will go with Company C if you're an aggressive investor. Reason why I said C is because it's way more risk that Raul brought up. 10 years is very long. As well as you do not know how that country operates. You know nothing about that company, that country. You're unfamiliar with that country. It is already rated as a high yield bond, right? The collateral is weak. So really, if you're an aggressive investor, you would really give your money to Company C. Company A now is for the very conservative people. 3%, all right, whew, 3%. 3 years, we can see 3 years. Them all I give my principal now too with my amortizing. Yeah, man, we can, whew, Paul and I gonna find me over this one. Company A is very conservative. So really and truly, the moderate person would be Company B. So even though I would have chosen Company C for me, Raul is actually correct. Company B would probably have been a better credit, and 10 was right. Company B probably would have been the better credit. But at the end of the day, no credit is actually bad and no credit is actually good. It really depends on how you are looking at it and the actual assessment that you do. And that is what really goes into determining which fixed income security you would invest in. So at this point, I'll ask, is there any questions online or in the room?
Digital represents company.
Digital can't go up on my model. That is just the truth. Digital can't go up here. Not because they are bad credit, but there's a lot of things that have going. Them characteristics, I forgot look upon this and pray about it and this really pray about it. I promise you, our CRO will not allow me to. So the question was asked, how does the current global pandemic affect the consideration for all of these bonds? Now that is for you to determine. Are you, given the current situation, you know the healthcare situation in Africa, you think the Timbuktu's situation is going to be there in 10 years time? No, that is a real question. So that is kind of what you're going to have to look at. That's a question for you to actually answer in terms of how do you think, do you think that this company will be able to survive in 10 years time given the current infrastructure that they have from a health perspective, from the government's perspective? We spoke about how S&P assesses a sovereign. Do they tick off all the right ticks where they saw that the rating is about BB+ for S&P? So I mean, is that what you take into consideration? So that is what so it's really a very subjective matter. So at this point in time, everybody would have an idea what it kind of goes into actually assessing a credit, right? You have to look at the 5 C's. You have to look at the credit rating. You have to look at the credit spread. You have to look at all those things collectively. You also have to look at the other end of the spectrum. Whose money am I investing? Are they high risk? Are they conservative? Are they moderate? There's really a lot that goes into determining. You can't just look at the profits that you set to earn and say, all right, earn the most on this, I can pit this. No, I adequately compensated for the risks. And that kind of wraps up this week's session.